Have you ever noticed how society doesn't just ignore smart ideas, but actively works against them? Why do brilliant thoughts get shot down while average ones get praised? Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's most honest philosophers, uncovered a disturbing truth nearly 2 centuries ago. Society doesn't just dislike intelligence, it actively punishes it, following patterns that repeat throughout history. When smart ideas get rejected, most people think it's because they weren't explained well or the timing was bad. But Schopenhauer saw something much more deliberate, a social defense system that kicks in whenever true intelligence threatens the comfortable beliefs we live by. He discovered something fascinating. When a truly smart idea enters a room, it doesn't need fancy words or credentials to trigger pushback. The very fact that it's intelligent becomes the reason people reject it. Think about how we respond to different kinds of excellence. We cheer athletic skill, admire wealth, and desire beauty. But superior intelligence, that gets torn apart, often very precisely. What Schopenhauer found wasn't just that society dislikes intelligence, it's that society has developed specific ways to shut it down before it can change anything. But why does society work so hard to punish the very thing it claims to value? Born in 1788 in Germany, Schopenhauer didn't develop these insights from abstract thinking alone. He experienced the systematic punishment of intelligence firsthand. His groundbreaking work, The World as Will and Representation, was initially ignored while lesser philosophical works became bestsellers. University positions he was qualified for went to intellectual mediocrities with better connections. But instead of becoming bitter, he became observant. He began documenting the specific methods society uses to neutralize threatening intelligence. He watched academic committees, publishing houses, social circles, and political organizations, all supposedly designed to elevate the best ideas. Yet, in each case, he saw the same pattern. The more fundamentally intelligent an idea was, the more elaborate the machinery deployed to contain it. Living independently from his writing and investments, Schopenhauer could observe these dynamics without needing society's approval for his survival. He documented how intelligence wasn't just passively overlooked, but actively confronted with systemic barriers. Today's research has validated what Schopenhauer observed through pure reasoning. Modern organizational psychology has identified what they call knowledge rejection patterns in institutions. Studies show that when genuinely novel ideas are presented to organizational leaders, they activate the same brain regions associated with physical threat detection. It's not just that we don't like smart ideas, we biologically respond to them as threats that must be neutralized. Research from Harvard Business School showed how companies that publicly claim to want innovation actually filter out the most innovative ideas during reviews. They don't reject them for being wrong. They reject them for being too different from what they already do. A 2019 study of patent applications found something interesting. The most original patent applications take 32% longer to be approved and face 3 times more initial rejections than others. This isn't just random. It shows how institutions resist new ideas. Stanford researchers using brain scans discovered that when people hear ideas that are both smart and challenge what everyone believes, their brains light up in the same areas associated with disgust and moral outrage, the exact same regions that activate when seeing something unethical. The punishment isn't just neurology, it's built into our social systems. But what Schopenhauer identified about why we construct these systems reveals something profound about human nature and society's need to protect itself from transformative intelligence. Here's the core of what Schopenhauer discovered. Society doesn't just randomly resist intelligence, it systematically punishes it through specific mechanisms that most of us participate in without realizing it. When an intelligent idea challenges accepted wisdom, people don't respond by carefully evaluating it. Instead, they immediately work to quarantine it through social penalties. Schopenhauer cataloged these penalties in detail. First, there's message distortion, where smart ideas get changed into something easier to dismiss. For example, someone says, "Our economic system has serious structural problems," and it gets twisted into, "They think capitalism is evil." Notice how all the nuance disappears, making the idea easy to reject. Then comes the personal attack. Instead of addressing the smart idea, people focus on the person sharing it. Maybe their analysis of corruption is good, but they're so arrogant about it. The value of the idea gets buried under attacks on personality. Schopenhauer noticed something troubling. The smarter and more careful someone is when sharing their ideas, the more complex the social tactics used against them. A sloppy thinker might just be ignored, but a precise thinker who can't be easily dismissed faces the full range of social punishments. The ultimate method Schopenhauer identified was what he called the truth-punishment connection, which simply means that the more important and fundamental a truth is, the harsher the social consequences for saying it publicly. This punishment works differently depending on where you are. In universities and intellectual circles where intelligence is supposedly valued, smart ideas get acknowledged, but then labeled as impractical, too theoretical, or not matching our current goals. In businesses, intelligence faces different roadblocks. It's not rejected outright, but buried under processes, committees, and needs more review until it loses momentum. In political spheres, Schopenhauer noted an especially effective method. Smart critiques get absorbed, stripped of their substance, and turned into empty reforms that preserve existing power structures. What all these different environments share is a common outcome. The intelligent insight, regardless of how valuable it might be, gets neutralized before it can disrupt established patterns. Modern psychology has confirmed this through studies showing that groups unconsciously work to identify and isolate the most intelligent contributions. And they don't do this because these ideas are wrong, but precisely because they're most likely to require significant change. What made Schopenhauer's analysis so powerful was his recognition that this isn't a conspiracy. It's a natural property of social systems designed to maintain stability, even at the cost of truth and progress. This has profound implications for how intelligence functions in society. Schopenhauer's most penetrating insight was that society doesn't merely reject intelligence, it systematically punishes it to control what kinds of intelligence are permitted to influence society. He noticed that technical intelligence that solves problems within existing frameworks gets rewarded, while transformative intelligence that questions the frameworks themselves triggers punishment responses. Consider how we celebrate engineers who make our devices faster, but marginalize thinkers who question whether those devices are shaping our cognition in harmful ways. The former improves the system as it exists. The latter asks us to reconsider the system itself. This difference explains something puzzling that many have noticed: why some very smart people do well in society, while others face constant pushback. The difference isn't how smart they are, but how they use their intelligence. Does it support the way things are already done, or does it challenge that? Does it solve problems within the rules everyone accepts, or does it question those rules? Schopenhauer saw that society has no problem with intelligence that supports the current system. It actually rewards it well, but intelligence that might fundamentally change how we organize our world faces organized punishment designed to stop its impact before it can take hold. The most insidious aspect of this system is that we're conditioned to participate in it without conscious awareness. How many times have you found yourself dismissing a brilliant idea because it seemed unrealistic or too radical without deeply examining those judgments? We become unwitting enforcers of society's intelligence punishment mechanisms, policing the boundaries of acceptable thought in ourselves and others. This is why you'll often hear phrases like, "That would never work in the real world," or "That's too complicated," used to dismiss ideas without actual evaluation of their merit. These aren't neutral observations. They're social tools for containing intelligence that threatens to disrupt comfortable patterns. Isn't it interesting that we celebrate intellectual revolutionaries from the past? Einstein, Darwin, Curie, while actively working to contain the revolutionary thinkers of our present. Schopenhauer explained this seeming contradiction. Society embraces intelligent disruption only after it has been safely contained in history, where it no longer threatens current power structures. We love intellectual revolution in retrospect, but punish it in real time. This dynamic plays out in every field. In art, we celebrate past innovators who broke all conventions, while subjecting current convention breakers to ridicule and exclusion. In science, we honor historical figures who overturned established paradigms, while making it nearly impossible for contemporary scientists to secure funding for truly paradigm-challenging research. Even in technology, which prides itself on innovation, the pattern holds. Tech companies claim to want revolutionary thinking, but primarily reward innovations that extend existing business models rather than fundamentally questioning them. The execution is different, but the function is the same: contain intelligence within boundaries that don't threaten established orders. Now let me show you how this pattern of punishment manifests in today's world, often in ways we don't immediately recognize. Look at how we structure our educational systems. We claim to cultivate intelligence, but our standardized assessments primarily reward conformity to existing frameworks. Students who provide unexpected but brilliant solutions often receive lower scores than those who follow prescribed methods. In professional environments, observe how organizations respond to employees who identify fundamental problems. They're labeled not team players, or told they focus too much on problems instead of solutions. Subtle punishments for intelligence that threatens organizational identity. On social media, watch what happens to nuanced, intelligent perspectives on complex issues. They get less engagement than simplified, polarizing takes, effectively removing them from public discourse. The marketplace of ideas sounds meritocratic, but in practice, it systematically filters out intelligence that requires effort to comprehend or that challenges comfortable assumptions. Schopenhauer would recognize all of these as modern manifestations of the same social immune response he identified centuries ago. Society claims to value intelligence while simultaneously developing increasingly sophisticated methods to contain and punish it when it threatens to create meaningful change. The most disturbing insight from Schopenhauer's work is what he called the paradox of collective advancement. Every society progresses through innovations that once faced punishment for challenging existing frameworks. Yet while celebrating past breakthroughs, societies simultaneously work to prevent the next wave of transformative intelligence from gaining influence. Think about it. We build monuments to past revolutionaries while creating increasingly complex systems to ensure current revolutionary thinkers cannot effectively challenge the status quo. We name universities after intellectual rebels from previous centuries, while designing those same institutions to produce graduates who think within carefully prescribed boundaries. Companies splash their walls with quotes from visionaries while maintaining evaluation systems that filter out truly visionary thinking as not aligned with our culture. This paradox exists because societies require change to survive, but fear change that comes too rapidly or unpredictably. Schopenhauer's insight wasn't that we should eliminate these protective mechanisms. He recognized their evolutionary purpose. Rather, he sought to make us conscious of them so that we might deliberately create spaces where transformative intelligence could flourish despite society's natural resistance. Understanding how society punishes intelligence doesn't mean surrendering to despair. Schopenhauer wasn't just identifying problems, he was creating a navigation map for those whose intelligence might otherwise be neutralized by social penalties. Once you recognize the patterns of punishment, you can develop strategies to introduce intelligent ideas in ways that minimize the automatic immune response they trigger. Let me show you how understanding Schopenhauer can help you navigate these challenges. First, recognize that when people push back against your smart insights, it's not your personal failure. It's a predictable pattern that happens to everyone. Just knowing this stops the self-doubt that causes many smart people to quiet themselves after facing social rejection. Second, learn to spot these punishment tactics when they appear. When you share an insight and someone suddenly starts talking about your personality instead of your idea, that's not random. It's a way to contain your influence. Spotting these tactics in the moment lets you guide the conversation back to what matters. Third, develop what Schopenhauer called strategic patience. This means understanding that truly transformative ideas rarely win through direct confrontation. They need to be introduced repeatedly from different angles, often over long periods. Let's look at how some of history's most brilliant minds dealt with this problem. Charles Darwin saw how society would punish his revolutionary ideas about evolution, so he waited. Rather than rushing to publish, he spent decades building such a thorough case that it couldn't be easily dismissed. He gathered mountains of evidence before going public. Ada Lovelace, working in mathematics when women were excluded from the field, developed a clever approach. She embedded her most revolutionary insights within careful references to established authorities. By connecting her new ideas to accepted frameworks, she made them seem less threatening. Even Nikola Tesla, whose brilliant ideas initially faced harsh criticism, eventually learned to present his most revolutionary concepts as natural extensions of established science. This made his ideas appear less threatening to existing power structures. These historical figures didn't succeed by simply being intelligent. They succeeded by understanding how society punishes intelligence and finding ways around those barriers. Being punished for intelligence doesn't mean you must choose between authentic expression and social acceptance. Schopenhauer wasn't suggesting we should dumb ourselves down or conform to mediocrity. Rather, he was showing us that introducing intelligence effectively requires understanding the social immune system it will inevitably encounter. Think about the most successful intellectuals you know. What separates them isn't just the quality of their ideas, but their ability to introduce those ideas in ways that minimize punishment triggers. They understand that how intelligence is presented often determines whether it will be engaged with or reflexively contained. Sometimes this means introducing transformative ideas gradually rather than all at once. Other times it means connecting new insights to established values in ways that make them feel like natural extensions rather than threatening replacements. Always it means recognizing that resistance to intelligence isn't irrational. It's a predictable response to anything that threatens to disrupt existing patterns that provide stability and predictability. Remember, Schopenhauer's goal wasn't to make us cynical about society's resistance to intelligence. It was to make us more effective at introducing intelligence in ways that can actually create positive change. The most important lesson from Schopenhauer isn't that society punishes intelligence, it's that understanding these punishment mechanisms allows us to work around them. We can introduce new ideas in ways that actually allow them to take root and grow. Next time you find your intelligent contribution being subtly pushed aside or attacked, remember Schopenhauer's insight. This isn't random or personal. It's a social pattern as predictable as gravity. Your task isn't to fight against this pattern, but to understand it well enough to work with it rather than against it. That's how intelligence ultimately changes the world, not by directly confronting society's punishment mechanisms, but by finding paths around them to introduce new possibilities that eventually become accepted as normal. If this analysis resonates with your experience, share your thoughts in the comments. How have you navigated the social penalties that come with introducing intelligent ideas that challenge existing frameworks?